Hey mamas, I am so happy to have you at this session. I know this is something that you're excited about, I'm excited about, because it's a topic that we all want to be, right? And not just in our daily lives, but also in our parenting, and that is empowered. Today I'm talking to Wendy Vigdor-Hess. Wendy is a family health and parenting coach specializing in helping holistic minded parents be the parents they need to be at for their children. And chances are, if you're at Mama's Wellness Summit, that kind of describes you in a nutshell. So this conversation will be jam-packed of thoughts and takeaways from her trademarked Empowered Parenting Coaching Program. She has shared this message globally, and it's an absolute pleasure to have her with us today. Have your notebooks handy, and thank you, Wendy, so much for being here.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here. Yeah, I'm so thrilled, and I'm so thrilled that you're offering all of this good information for all of us mamas out there. It's awesome. So and I'm super excited to bring this to the summit. I come by it, honestly, I bring this information, not just as a mom of two kids, but also with a variety of different trainings, but also just from living my own life. So as a child who was really sensitive and empathic and intuitive, coming at it from that perspective to really have a passion for helping children from a young age to be empowered themselves, and then also helping as a parent now myself to help parents have that, to be empowered as parents so that they can then go forth and bring that perspective as well. And it's just we're going to talk about a number of different things today, because the bottom line is, I know that there's so many issues that are going on. There are so many, oftentimes I see families who have they've tried a lot of different approaches and how to get help with their kids, and they've tried like a multitude of things, and they're still having issues, they're still having problems, and that's normal. To be a parent is not an easy thing. And so we're really going to talk about all the different things that have come up. Maybe when you're listening, you're feeling disconnected from your child. Even in the middle, we're taping in the middle of a pandemic right now, but maybe you're still feeling disconnected, or you're feeling frustrated, or you're noticing more behaviors that you've noticed before perhaps, but now they're even stronger than they were. Maybe you feel frustrated, or you're overwhelmed, or you're angry. So you just might be feeling a lot of what's not working. And then also the other piece is, as parents, you may feel like, wow, you have given so much and now you're giving more and there's so much unknown and you're feeling super depleted. Is any of this familiar?
I
Like,
just read an article about how mom rage is on the increase. And I was
yeah,
just like, well, yeah.
yeah, like, hello, right, yeah. So I mean, it's like, this is just what's happening, and this is what's happening anyway, but it's even more magnified now with what we're living through, and it's unprecedented. And it's times that no one's ever lived through before, really. So it's all new. But don't worry, because what we're going to talk about too is just, it's not that it's all going to, snip, snap, magically disappear. This is more just a different way that we can come to it, because we've learned different things over the years. And, some of those things have worked, or they might work for a little while, but then we're right back in it. And, I mean, I see you shaking your head like, yeah, I mean, me too. As a parent, we try all sorts of things, and, things like quote work, and then they don't work. And then also it's sort of like with kids, it's like, once you kind of learn, oh, I got this diaper thing down, I'm good, and then all of a sudden they're like toddlers, and they're like got other stuff going on, like, right? I mean,
There's
that's
always
what we
something new. And even with the wellness for us and the kids, I feel like some things that might have worked in one season just really don't work.
Yep.
Like maybe at one point journaling was working, but now you feel like you don't have the time for that. So maybe it's like, let's switch to breathing exercises, or,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
going to be like different in different seasons, definitely.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's so true. And and that's what we want. We really want like more of this foundational. And so that's what I hope this conversation can help bring to all of the listeners. And because this is so common, like, no one is alone in this. No one, everyone is going through it, and everyone is going through it in their own way. That we were saying that rage, is on, that you had read, rage is on the rise. But, some mamas and parents may have different emotions that they're feeling more of. They may feel more depressed, or they may feel more hopeless, or they may feel more frozen, like they don't know what to do, or insecure, or so there's not a one size fits all or a one way. So even though as humans we all can feel all the emotions, and we do, oftentimes we tend to we may gravitate to some more than others, because that's sort of our way. And we may see that in our kids too. And so all of this, I just want to normalize all of this, because it's very common, and this is so normal that we would be feeling all these different things. And so that's part of the empowered parenting, is to just really recognize that there is not one way, and that when we go into this whole thing of wanting to fix it, or wanting to, that something's wrong with us or our kids, or, everything, it's very disempowering in and of itself. Do you know what I mean?
Right. And then plus, I think even with the emotions, like, we can all feel them at the same time. So you can be feeling that depression or stress, and then still gratitude, and then it's like, then what? Because I feel like we do tend to look at the negative traits, and then we're like, oh well, I'm just so this and so that. But it's like, there actually are like a multitude of things going on at one time. So it is good to actually be aware of that.
Yes, absolutely. That's true. And it's and that's the way it's supposed to be. I mean, and again, it's like, that's kind of making it a right or wrong, and that's not what I mean. But it's more like, all of that can be okay. And that's what we're talking about, is that there's so much pressure on parents, and especially mamas, to like have to be a certain way, and that you can't have that, and there can't be all these different things going on, because it's either black or white, or it's either, right or wrong, or it's, this is the way to do it, or this isn't the way to do it. And it's like, and now we're having conversations about how it's everything, and that's what's so important. So, if nothing else today, I want you to remember that it's about progress and not perfection too. And that, allowing this to be emotional, and to have things come up, but also to, just stay heartfelt about it. And remembering that it's not about fixing. There's nothing wrong. And even if you're going through some really hard things, and it feels like things are wrong or bad, just remembering that this is all coming up as part of an opportunity to heal. And so, when we're going through the mindsets, which we're going to cover 4 of them, they can make a more immediate difference. And so, we're going to talk also about kind of what can prevent parents from healing this relationship with their kids also. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of the branches that I work with, or talk about too, that can help parents and provide some step-by-step. So as we go through the steps, I'm going to give some examples. So both of how it's used, and then also how you might want to use it, or an action step that might be helpful for you. So
Sounds good.
yeah. So thinking about that too. So remembering to embrace a beginner's mind. So just kind of, we all as mamas, we've been through a lot, we've tried a lot. So remembering that even if certain things, that what I'm saying, some of it may sound familiar, some of it may be things that you've tried in different ways, but to just come to it, stay open, and just see what's going to happen as maybe a different story. And that the mindset can make a really big difference too, when you're thinking about it that way. So there's so much opportunity for change, and I just am excited about that. So before I go into some of the mindset pieces, so whoever's listening, if you want to think about something, why is this topic interesting to you? What made you want to come and listen to this particular session? Is there something that you're struggling with your child or children? that you feel like, oh gosh, I feel so disempowered, or I feel, bad, or like I'm doing something wrong, or so just have something in your mind. So do you have something too that you can think about for the topic too?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So me too. So we're going through. All right. So from the first different steps. So let's cover the first one. So I call this from the fix my kid to I have a unique child. So
Already, I'm
right?
just like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, right? Because that's what we do, right? And this is so, it can change everything and everyone because it changes the measuring system. So what we're used to doing is we're saying, oh my gosh, there's, like they're doing this, they're acting out, they're this, they're that. And there's a lot of focus on that. And when we're changing it to like, okay, maybe if there's nothing wrong, how would that change how I'm thinking about this? It can change the whole situation. Does that make sense?
But a lot of that also is still like the way we were parented, right? Because like that's kind of like the measuring stick that we have.
Yep, exactly, exactly. And so when I'm going through this with people, that's why I tend to work like it's a whole integrative approach, because I'm working with the parents, because usually the parent, the kid isn't coming to me to hire me. The parents are I'm working with the parents, but we're uncovering our own stories and our own histories. And then the way that comes out, because most of the time you meet most parents, and even if their intention is not to parent the way they were parented and they've made significant changes to not, there's still little bits and pieces that come in because like that's part of it, is we get to be parents to these children who are shining their light and shining themselves at us and with us. And sometimes we see it and sometimes we don't, depending on what our own experience was. Does that make sense?
It does. And then
Yeah.
like I have friends too that are really like into zodiac and just all things, even if there wasn't zodiac at all, really, it's just like is another person, like a whole other very different person from you. And like sometimes our instinct is really just like to make them the mini me, like,
Right.
and it's like, but they're a whole other being, entity, all of that, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so I love that, because that's exactly right. And they're here with their own gifts. And sometimes parents, like I said, the frustration can come because they can't connect to the kid and they feel like, who is this person? But sometimes it's from that place of, oh my gosh, they're bringing up me because I'm looking right in the mirror right now and I don't like what I'm seeing, And so it's like either way, no matter how you're looking at it or whatever is coming up for you, it still may not feel so comfortable or so good all the time. But so what we're doing though is saying like, well, how can we bring more ease to that? Like that's happening, but how can we make it so that it's not as uncomfortable and it can be more streamlined, if you will, and more gentle, and that being also gentle with ourselves too. So what we tend to do when we notice this from this first step too is we often go to the tools, and we want to try to fix it still.
That probably makes it so much easier though to take.
And so a client who's a little girl, yeah, right. It is. It's like we feel like that'll help, but then oftentimes we can feel disillusioned because we try that and then it may, like we said, work for a little bit, but then it doesn't, or it doesn't work. And then we feel more hopeless and more like, wow, what's wrong with me? It's like this heavy feeling, of like, what are we doing wrong and what's wrong with us and what's
Failing at parenting at that point.
Exactly. And then it brings up more of what's wrong with me or what's wrong with them or all of it, and so we feel worse. So here's an example from a client recently that she has a very spirited child, and she talks about how her little girl, she can ask her to do stuff and she may sometimes do it and sometimes not do it, even if it's something that she loves to do. So, and it all depends on kind of like why would she do it sometimes and why wouldn't she do it other times? And, it becomes kind of this battle back and forth. And it's very frustrating as a parent. And so when we were talking about, okay, well, how can this be reframed? How can it be like, what is the uniqueness in this?
Right.
And so what in our conversations, what arose was that this little girl is super passionate and she's a leader and she's little, but it's already, you can see that in her because it's like she is following her heart. And sometimes even if it's something she loves to do, she doesn't do it because it's not in her heart at that moment.
How old is she?
This one is 7.
Okay.
And but the parents have been seeing it in her since little, since
Right.
even younger. And so it's like, and then once we started talking more about that, it's like, oh, there's like a resting of like, oh yeah, my daughter is like it feels good. You can feel it like, oh yeah, she's a leader,
Right.
she's
Let's
gonna do
nurture that.
something.
Like nurture that
Yeah.
rather than trying to squash it out.
Exactly. And so even though the parenting moments are still not so wonderful at times, and like, it's like, okay, well, we really need to leave now and we can't have like, if it's in your heart or not to put your shoes on kind of thing,
Right.
like it's working within that. But even just having that mindset switch, even in those moments, it helps because it's not as dramatic of going down the rabbit hole of like, oh, here we go again, and why does she need to be so difficult, and why does this need to be so difficult, and wow, what am I doing wrong, and like all the negative chatter that can come up. And instead it becomes a really like, okay, well, how can I let her lead in this situation? How can I let her, take it on and be using her gift in a different way? So is this making sense?
That does, and that's so powerful because like I feel like a lot of us, even like with the like going to school and then it's like sit down, be quiet, and kind of like fitting into the mold rather than like
Yeah.
actually looking at each child and going like, oh yeah, this one's a little bit more quiet, but that doesn't mean like, because I feel like even like when I used to think about it, I'm like, I always thought I was introverted, and even though like a part of me is really like, I do need rest after being with people, which is what introversion is. But I feel like when I was younger, I just thought it meant like I don't like to talk to people, and I just, when that's not the truth. Like I'm having such a
Right.
good time talking to you right now, but it's like I now know. Whereas for years when I was younger, I'm like, oh, this is what it means because this is what people told me.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And by the way, me too. I have like I have both. Well, we all have both. But yeah, I mean, I need that. And it's like, but there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's the way you actually regenerate so that you can go be with people,
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it's a beautiful, beautiful quality. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. I love that reflection because that's exactly what we're talking about, and that will be different for each child. So just like it's different for each of us, and it's different within the family dynamic of how we may be versus our child, or if you have more than one child in your home and your partner, if you have, if you're married, single, divorced, whatever is happening, in the dynamic, there's all sorts of things that are happening in different ways that people relate and different gifts that we're all bringing in.
Right.
So it's like working, within what is working and working within the positive of that is the mindset shift that so everyone can thrive. Everyone can feel that sense of like, yeah, I got this. I'm good,
I
you
feel
know?
tired already.
Yes.
I
Oh,
really,
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. That's exactly what I want. Yes, it's exactly. And it's like in our minds, it seems like, oh, simple. Now in practice, it's not always that simple, but that's okay, because what we're talking about is about bringing the awareness to this, and that this awareness can change in a split second. You can have that awareness, like, and because they're going to especially push your buttons on the days that you're just, you don't have it. You're just tired, you already are cranky in your own self, and then of course that's going to be the day when these kinds of things are going to feel more magnified or happen.
right.
But even in that moment, like, okay, just tweak it. It's like that can happen. So take, for, if you thought of something at the beginning of this talk that were working with, like an issue or something. So just for a moment, like that's your action step for this step, is just how can you redefine one of these quote issues that you have with your child or children And do this, if you have it, like there's usually, even in a family with many kids, there's often one that sort of is pushing buttons more than others. But generally, it's a good practice to do with different kids, so if you have more than one, take that on and just see, in your own time, like, okay, what are there, how can I reframe what I see for them? So does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, great. So looking at the next one is from grasping for tools to going inward for answers. And so we're sort of talking about that already, where we are the first one, we are sort of going inward because we're recognizing more of what's happening for them. And so there aren't, the bottom line, there's not manuals for parenting. Like, we become parents and there's no how to.
I mean, there are
And
a lot of books, but
there's a lot of books, right?
right.
Yeah, there's a lot of books, and then that's what we do. We look at the books, but then when we try the different things, it's like sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And it's like, it's like anything else that we learn. People say, oh, I've tried this particular diet and that was great for me, and then the person next to them is like, oh, I tried that was horrible for me. And so with kids, it's like, oh, I tried the sleep it out, or the cry it out, and oh gosh, I did that and that was horrible. So it's like there's always this uniqueness. And so that for this approach, it's like talking about what is that uniqueness and how can you use that towards what you're doing. And so what this does when you are, bring more awareness and go inward, is it helps calm the nervous system.
Okay.
And so it slows us down, and that allows us to bring more healing in. And we all could use some more healing, right? Yeah. So, and when we're in the midst of it, even doing that, when we feel like, oh, our mind is racing and we're going towards, okay, what can I do? How can I fix this? Da, 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 the whole thing. It's like, if we just go, okay, what's happening for me inside right now? And it's that, again, split second, and it brings attention to you, but not from a place of, I'm not doing it right and I'm bad. It's what's underneath all that, because you can decide that things can change here. In that split second, it's you can make that change because it's coming from the inside. So it's really an inside out approach that we're talking about.
So going inward is just like sitting for a second and identifying what we are feeling inside.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you're feeling like you want to grasp for something outside and you want to like go look up the book, you want to go look and see, oh, what can I do? Okay, this is happening. So this doctor says, oh, okay, I can do this when this is happening. But instead, like, what feels right for you in that moment, and likely you're going to be agitated, or something is going to, you're not going to be settled in that moment. But taking that moment to be like, what really am I thinking in this moment, and what really is happening for me? And when you bring that awareness to it, it's amazing. The more that, again, this is progress and not perfection, and it's baby steps. So the more that you start to kind of, it's like creating a new muscle, and it's like creating a new groove where you are looking differently. It's like creating a new roadmap is basically what we're doing. So instead of sort of going to the, oh gosh, I've got to, what's wrong? Do they have this? Is this going on? Is that going on? We're actually doing it differently. We're doing an opposite thing. So when you take that time to go inside and say, oh, okay, then you may notice something else. And it may not feel comfortable. You may notice, wow, I just was like really rude to my kid. Or, wow, I am so cranky, I don't even feel like being with my kid right now. Or wow. So it may not necessarily, this isn't about like, it's going to feel so amazing, because it may not, but that's okay. It's about just getting curious about what comes up with that, because likely when you're talking about, the kids are feeling that. And so the kids can feel, and that's partly why why they may be acting out or having these different things too. It's not because of us. It's they are their own people. And in feeling the energy, it's just like when we feel what's going on in our world, we have a lot of feelings about that. We have a lot of emotions and a lot of things that come up, and so it's the same sort of thing. So getting curious about that, of what is that. And I think that that's what's been so beautiful about this pandemic, and about this, our conversations, our race conversations, and our, everybody being human and everybody being the same, is is it's forcing us to look at ourselves and where are we? And so it's bringing more of that conversation to parenting, which is really what's super important. You know, instead of the parenting over, which we've been taught of like, I'm the parent and you're the kid, this is, you know, like, yes, we need to still be the parent and, you know, do all the things. And this is a relationship. You
Yeah.
know, this is about being in relationship with this other being that, like you said, comes in with its own planets wherever they are and squared and, you know, all sorts of things. So it's having that different understanding.
I'm
So
telling you, I am like listening to you and I'm just like, oh my gosh. I'm like that, like how you're like the one thing we're supposed to think about. I'm like, I'm thinking of everything right now because I'm realizing like how you said it isn't always going to be pretty. So
right.
like a while back, like when I separated from my ex in 2018, I was noticing that my son was shrieking a lot. Like we'd go and play, and he'd be like, and I was kind of just like, what's wrong with him? Like, is this like some ADHD? Like, what does this mean? I was talking to a friend, and she was just like, no, he just was probably seeing how stressed you are, and he's
Right.
trying to like, he doesn't know how to handle that either. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so like, you know, we've done different things. He's done yoga and we do a lot of art and things like that, just to like calm us both down. But then I
Right.
noticed like being home the last couple of months, I see him getting loud again. And it's because like now he's like, now I've been inside and caged, so like now I know to look for these cues. And so
Yeah.
after a while of looking within, not that I have it all figured out at all, but I can kind of, you get more intuitive with it when you're like, wait, I've seen something like this before, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah, exactly. That is such a perfect example. Thanks for sharing that because that's exactly it. It's not, and it's not, it's like it happens in your day-to-day moments. Like it, you know, it's like just something that happens. And sometimes you can kind of be like in the, oh my gosh, is it ADHD? Is it this? Is it that? Is it what is wrong? Da,
You
da,
want to
da.
name it, right? Like I have to name it so I can solve it.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And oh, I just love that. And it's so it's just about being in the moment so that you can be like, oh, and that's and actually this leads great to the next step, which is actually about navigating with curiosity instead of anxiety and fear.
Cool.
Because that's what we do. And that's what we do. We're used to saying, oh my gosh, what's wrong? There's something wrong. And we're doing that based on what we feel, or we're doing it based on what society may feel about it. Like, oh, this is wrong. Oh, my kid is in the grocery store and they're doing, you know, they're yelling, or they're, you know, having a tantrum, or, you know, what it could be, whatever, you know, and it's like not appropriate, you know, it's not, we're not supposed to, and then we feel bad and shame and et cetera, et cetera. But it's like, if you're just noticing like, wow, maybe it's overstimulating in the store for them, or maybe they're feeling someone, you know, that was not very nice and they glared at them and they took it in, or, you know, who knows. And again, we're not, this isn't about being heady about it, but it's just being present. It's just having a different sense of presence around it. And for step 3, it's about, instead of allowing ourselves to go to that anxiety and fear first, it's actually navigating with curiosity. And
I
so kind
actually
of,
I'm taking notes.
oh, good, good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad this is helpful. It's so good. I'm so grateful. And it's, you know, because that kind of like the going from fix your child to what's unique, it's the similar kind of thing with this, you know, instead of grasping, we look inward, and then instead of, you know, being, oh my gosh, what's, you know, that what's wrong kind of thing, it's like, oh, that's so interesting, you know. And just like what you said, he's shrieking, and just like you went and you knew intuitively like, oh, I'm gonna ask my friend, you know. And then you could, you know, it's like that's, it's just like that. And that in and of itself is just feeling empowered. You know, you don't feel as anxious, you feel more like, you know. And neither does the child. So the child can feel more like, oh, okay, I can shriek. They don't have the same understanding in their brain, depending on their age,
Right.
of why they're shrieking, or why they're, you know, acting out in the grocery store, or why they're pushing your buttons. They don't think of it that way. Like with the example I gave earlier, they don't think of it that way. She is just a leader. She just wants to kind of see how far she can get. She just
Right.
wants to see, it's fun for her. It's like exploratory for her. She just wants to kind of see, oh, I'm going to try this now. No, I'm going to try this now. No, I don't feel like doing that. I'm going to do this now. To her, it's playful. It's
Right.
fun. To the parent, it's like, what are you doing? We just did this yesterday. Why can't we do it again? Can't we just have a rhythm? So it's like, but if we can add like how we're laughing and the humor around it, it's like, that is so good for our nervous system. And it's so helpful to not just us, but to the nervous system of the whole family, to the regulation of the whole family, to our children feeling us being happier and calmer about what's happening, instead of feeling like, oh gosh, what am I doing wrong? Oh no, I'm a bad, because they don't want to be bad kids. They don't want to do wrong. They don't want to make mistakes any more than we do. We don't want to screw up our kids. We don't want to, make mistakes. We don't want to, but like, if we can lighten up about all of that, like, we learn through mistakes. Like, we learn by trial and error. We learn by trying different things. And to see the beauty of that instead of the what's wrong with that, it's huge. It's so helpful. So it sounds like this is making sense so far. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so
Okay.
much sense. I'm so excited.
Okay, good. Yay. So I have, I love that you've given examples too. And I want to share another example too from something that happened with me. I remember when my daughter, I have two kids, and when my daughter was really little, there was a day that I came down in the morning, and I was just kind of grumpy, and she was, trying to get my attention, and I snapped a little and said, like, I just wasn't nice I was sort of like, well, I was sort of in to-do mode. I'm like, well, did you get your homework done? Did you do this? Did you do that? It's sort of like, if these things are done, then we can kind of do the fun, or then, and it came out that way. And I saw her body language just kind of do this, like, and it was very slight and very like, almost, it wasn't subtle exactly, but it wasn't like exactly like how I just did it.
Yeah.
But it was enough that I was just like, whoa. And it was like, I snapped out and I turned around. I wasn't right next to her. I was like across the room, and I turned around with my back towards where she was. And then I turned back towards where I was facing her. And I started saying in a really like exaggerated voice, like, well, and da, 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 kind of being more of like how I was. And I was like, well, and then we can't have fun, and da, 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 and I was really like exaggerated about it. And she just looked up and she started beaming and cracking up. And then we both started laughing.
I have
And that
tears in my eye right now, like laughter tears, because this is like, I can just see it. Like, that would be like, I do something similar with my son too when I catch myself. And I'm like, because sometimes we are like such authoritarians where we're just kind of like, no, 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 no. And I'm just like, yeah, I do that too.
right.
I'm like, oh, I'm being mean mommy right now.
Right, exactly. And it's like, oh my gosh, so I could have gone, and I use myself in this example too, because, like, I'm talking about this, but I'm human too, and I'm a parent too. And like, this is not about, my whole approach is not about like, oh, I'm perfect and going to tell everybody how to do this. This is not like, that's not how it works. It's like, we are all like, it's to be empowered is to actually be in community with this and to understand each other as mamas, and to be, and to not have that, I think our culture is doing so much of like the comparison. Oh, is your baby napping? Oh, my baby's sleeping through the night. Oh, has your baby crawled yet? Or, oh, has your, like all this kind of, it's like, there's so much of that. And that's not helpful, because that makes parents feel worse and moms feel worse that they're not doing it right. And so this is about, engaging and also bringing in and creating that community that we're in this together, and we can, like, me too. And it's not about, I could have easily been like, oh gosh, I'm a horrible mom and I feel so bad. And oh gosh, and I talk to people about this and I'm still doing it. Like, I could have gone on a real rant, but it's like, it can change in a split second. And it's being kind, that I can be kind to myself in that too. It can change the energy, and there's no discussion that's needed. It's not like we needed to sit around and then say, oh, I'm sorry, I was, it's like, I can say that in a split second, like, oh, mommy was really grumpy like that, wasn't she? And then it's over. It's
Right.
done. So that, so the navigating with the curiosity and all of that, it's like, that's all part of it. It's like, it can just be quick, it can be a split second. It's not real heady, these things, and then we can change our mindset with that and get curious with that, and and then just see from there what's going to happen. And then all of this is taking the cohesive approach where we're looking at all of the different things and we're saying, okay, what does that look like and what can we do with that? So that's step 4, is sort of taking all of that and making it where it's all together. And there's different ways of doing that where we're looking at different things, but the first, what we already have done is doing that. And certainly, like you said, and how you're doing on the summit, it's like there's all these different things that you can, these tools that you can do. It's doing art and doing and movement and doing these different things. And then it's also, when I'm working with people, I'm looking at different ways in which it comes up in their life. So does it happen with the rhythm in their life or the rhythm in their family or the lack of rhythm, in their family? Does it have helpful to look at the diet? Is it like kind of a nervous system thing where, like I was talking about, when we're kind to ourselves, we, that kind of spreads. It's like that feeling of like, does there feel like there's calm and peace in the dynamic? And then looking at the energy, looking at what's happening, like kind of like with that little girl, it's like we can see the energy of patterns, and also of the way the patterns, like what we've talked about too, the patterns of how we were raised versus what we're, and how we're aware that we may want to change certain things from how we were raised, and then the subconscious pieces of how we may not either be aware, or even if we are aware, they're really grooved in there and it's very difficult to shift them. So those are some of the more energetic aspects of that I call in the work that we're doing together. And so there's all different ways to look at that. And it's we can understand with our minds and have an understanding of how to do it and then put it forth. And then also, understandably, it's helpful to have support in that too. So it's it's that combination of how we can do that. And like, I love that you asked for support from your friend of like, what's happening here, and that's what I feel like with more empowered parenting, there's so much hiding. There's so much, dealing with a lot of this in behind our own closed doors, because we look on these, Facebooks and Instagrams, and, people don't generally post as much of, like they're posting happy pictures, they're smiling in the pictures, and they're not necessarily posting of like, wow, I screamed at my child, or wow, and so, but all these things, it's like, all these things are happening, all these different things. So, in order to kind of step in, it is about allowing yourself to take those small baby steps and to be vulnerable, for us all to just be vulnerable and to allow for us to learn and grow. And I think there's no better time than now. I also, if people feel like they need support over and above, I offer free discovery sessions. So you can look on my website, and which is www.vigdorhess.com. Or, like, so we may not have the same understanding as a tribe of mamas and as a tribe of, we know what it's like to love our kids, and we know what it's like to want desperately to help our kids, and we know what it's like to want to be the best that we can possibly be for our children. Like those, it's like these are all things that unify us, and let's connect over those, and let's learn and grow, and let's be like, wow, I don't know what it's like to have that, but hey, I tried this when this was going on for me, and maybe in some sort of way that can happen, or I had this awareness about, so it's like the more that we're following these mindset, these steps and things, and not from a place of like, okay, I'm going to do step 1 and then I'm going to do step 2, and then I'm like, it's more just like the more we kind of bring that awareness to it, that's the foundation, because we are empowering ourselves as parents, and we are empowering ourselves as strong mamas to be the leaders, because oftentimes the mamas are the leaders of the family, whether you are a single mama, in a relationship, in a partnership, whatever. Usually you see that the mamas are the ones who are bringing forth, they're the ones who make a lot of the decisions of, what food do you buy in your house, or what things. But in our culture, it's often, there's a paradigm shift with that too, of how that is actually seen, or how that is actually, and so that is part of the empowerment too, which is also part of the work that I am bringing, because it's to empower the mamas to be like, how do you want to lead? How do you want to step in and be different? And what does that mean to speak up to in your partnerships, and to speak up and to change the dynamic in your homes with that? And again, none of this is particularly easy, or, hey, this is fun. Like, yay, I want to do this. Can't I just take a pill instead? Or can't I just, it's like, it's not necessarily light. However, the lightness and the beauty and the empowerment that comes, that's the nugget that everyone is really looking for. And so the more that we can bring more of this forth, it's like, that's what can change it. And that's what can bring the quote end goal, that which there really is no end goal, because our kids are always they're going to keep growing, and we're going to keep growing. So it's not like you get there and then you're done, but that inner feeling that I think people are really wanting when they're going through their parenting journey, even if you screw up, it can be fun, because even though it's hard sometimes, it can be like, just like we're laughing, we laugh because we get it. Yeah, like I've been there too, and that brings a lightness, and it's a beauty, and that's the connection piece. So does that make sense?
All of that made sense. And even as you were saying that, I was just thinking, like, so many of us just think of parenting like the toddler years, the teen years, like college, not really realizing, like, I'm in my 30s, my mom's like in her 60s, but she's still my mom. I'm still her kid. Like, it's not like it ends with
Right.
actual adulthood or anything. Like, so it's
Right.
really cool to think about, like, the things that we set in motion now, not only helping them now, but in the future. Like, this is literally like 60 years, generations, like so
Yeah.
much that can happen from using these tools, or just like changing this mindset.